to Copernicus, and I want to just start off by saying, go Bears. All right. So I'm going to ask if we could ask our panelists to come on and have a seat. We'll get started. So we are here. Welcome to the first of 4 budget town hall meetings. We hope it's going to be a productive time for all of us. As I said, we are actually a little bit ahead of time, so we started a little bit early, but we will certainly end on time at 8 o'clock. If you haven't had a chance to do so, I would encourage you, shortly after, there's a community engagement fair that's right outside. With city departments. Feel free to go out and have a conversation with folks and get some information. They will be there until 8:30. So our purpose today here is twofold, one of which is to have you have a chance to hear some information, get some information about the budget, to hear from the mayor, and also for the mayor and staff to be able to hear from you. So we hope this is going to be a meaningful conversation, that it will be two-way. I will explain the public comment period rules a little later. We won't have a lot of time, but our goal is to have you be able to say, to get as many people as possible up at the mics so that we can hear from you. So with that said, I'd like to, before we get started, I'm just wondering if we can ask city staff, staff from city departments, commissioners, and staff, if you could please stand if you're able, so we can recognize you. Thank you. Thank you. And now I'd like to ask if there are any aldermen or women in the audience, if you could please stand so we can recognize you if you're able. Thank you. Thank you so much. So some of you have already had, if you haven't had a chance to do so, there's a little strip with a card that has, on the front side, it just has, it asks for your name, and then on the back we're asking for you to tell us a little bit about what it is that you're wanting to talk about. If you haven't had a chance, are there staff in the audience who could, if you could raise your hand, so if you see folks, there's someone here, someone there, if you in fact need a card and a pen, possibly, if you can just keep your hands raised, the staff will find you. So in addition to the vital information about the budget and a chance to have your voice heard, we also have, as I said, a community engagement fair, and again, that will be happening until 8:30. We encourage you to take advantage of that, to ask people questions or to find out what is being offered at these various departments. Again, I said this is going to be a 2-part structure. So the first part will be information that will be shared with you, and then the second part by the mayor and the senior staff, and then the second part will be a testimony or a section in which people can offer testimony. On the stage to my right, you have the Chief Financial Officer, Ginny Bennett. To her right, you perhaps need no introduction, but to her right is Mayor Lori Lightfoot. And to the mayor's right is the Chicago Budget Director, Susie Park. So I'm going to ask if we can start this conversation. I just want to make sure that's me. I just want to, before we get going and before I ask the mayor to come up and share some thoughts with you, I just want to share a couple of rules of engagement that I will try to honor this evening. And the goal in using these rules is just to get us out and to be as mindful and respectful of each other as possible. I just want to first of all say, ooh, it's lovely to see you. Good to see you. We're really thrilled that you took time out of your busy schedules to come, so thank you. With that said, I'm asking all of us if we can be present, and part of that means if you could silence your cell phones, that would be really helpful. I am asking for you to respect the stack. Some of these expectations actually come from work with homeless youth, so they're really cool to see. I ask that you honor time limits. The more people we can get to have at the mics would be great, and so we're going to ask you to hurry up, make your point, but be mindful that the shorter the comments, the more people we can hear from. Have courageous conversations this evening. Don't yuck my yum, which is one of my favorites. You may hear me, I'm known for this thing called Elmo, which means enough, let's move on. So that's my sort of reminder that, okay, we've said what we need to say, let's move on. I also might slip into some very dangerous, clean budget jokes. The first of which is, what kind of telephone does a nervous stock market inventory carry? A cell phone. Okay. So, expect growing pains and think about what is possible. So, with that said, let's have a fun town hall budget, a town hall budget meeting, or a budget town hall, that's the right words. So with that, I'm going to ask Mayor Lightfoot if she would come up and share some remarks, and then following that, she will have Susie come up. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be on the great Northwest Side. I was just here a couple days ago for Polonia Fest, so I'm always happy to be back. I want to thank the various city commissioners and mayor's office staff who are here, as well as the aldermen who are also here. And I want to, in particular, call out Budget Committee Chairwoman Pat Dow. Maybe you would stand and wave to the crowd. I appreciate that you have taken the time out of your evening in making the trip here to participate in a conversation about how our city's budget is crafted. As I said from the start of my campaign as mayor, right on through my State of the City address last week, it's time to shine a light on our budget-making process. That means being as open and transparent and inclusive as possible. We've already gotten started by creating a more transparent budget forecast. Thanks to our budget director, Susie Park, and her team, our budget forecast was designed not just to educate Chicagoans on where their tax dollars are going, but to empower and inspire all of you to help shape what the budget will look like. My central mission as mayor is to fully unlock our city's potential. And that only happens by breaking the cycle of investing here and not there, of providing advantages to some but not others, and listening to a few and ignoring the many. That we have to turn away from completely. I've already spoken about some of our own budget ideas, from making our government run more efficiently to working with Springfield on bringing the Chicago casino. And now we want to give you an opportunity to tell us about your ideas on how to make government run more efficiently, or any revenue ideas that you have. The change that we want and the change that we need has to happen right here in these kinds of conversations. We created these town halls because my team and I are committed to hearing from you, our residents, our parents, our young people, our small business owners and community members. We want to hear from you on where we should invest and how we deliver services and what those services should look like. It's in these discussions that we bring to life our shared mission of creating a Chicago that's safer, more fair, and more prosperous for every resident. And as I've said many times before, we are living in one of the most important moments in our lifetimes. I mean that, and I believe it to be true. And while we face significant challenges as a city, we are also standing at the forefront of tremendous opportunities. And I know many of you believe that as well. That is what tonight is all about, embarking on new, respectful partnerships with our residents on key issues in their lives, ensuring that we take advantage of the opportunities available to us, and working as collaborators to develop real, sustainable solutions to our challenges by listening to the very people whose lives will most be affected. That is how we create a Chicago whose growth is truly inclusive, whose opportunities are fully accessible to all. That process has to start here and now, tonight, and we have to face our challenges together, growing together and fulfilling our promise as a city that is a beacon of hope to every resident. I'm excited about the opportunity to hear from you. I know my team is as well. And now it's my pleasure to turn over the mic to our budget director, Susie Park, who will give you a presentation on some of the budget basics before we begin our discussion. And one last thing before Susie comes up. Consuela mentioned that we have a community or a city services fair, and I just wanted to mention some of the departments that are represented outside. So you may hear us if you ask a specific question or you have a particular challenge, we may refer you to somebody who's staffing one of these tables. But the various city departments that are there are Chicago Public Library, Department of Water Management, Department of Emergency Management Communications, 311, Streets and Sanitation, Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, the Chicago Police Department, Chicago Department of Public Health, the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, the Department of Family and Support Services, Chicago Department of Transportation, Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities, Buildings Department, the Department of Planning, there's a table for the Mayor's Office, and Animal Care and Control. So I think we've covered a full array of city services, and I hope that you stop by and bring to them any issues or concern that you have, but we look forward to hearing from you now. Susie?
Thank you, Mayor. Let me get to. All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you, first off, for taking time out of your evening to come and participate in our first town hall around the 2020 budget. Before we start the public comment portion of the evening, I want to take just a few minutes to provide a quick overview of our budget, our forecast for 2020, and some results of our survey that we've had open since mid-August. Right off the bat, I do want to share with everyone, I know we do get a lot of questions about this, that the city's budget that we're talking about today does not include our sister agencies. So the Chicago Public Schools, the Park District, CTA, the Chicago Housing Authority, as well as City Colleges of Chicago are separate sister agencies. They have their own budget process, a different schedule, as well as a separate approving body. So I did want to put that out there. And what we'll be covering tonight is the larger city budget. So for 2019, the total city budget for this year is $10.67 billion, and it is covered across 6 funds. Our fiscal year goes from January 1st through December 31st, so it is a calendar year. What we want to talk about tonight is the largest portion of this, which is our corporate fund, where most of the city's general operating fund costs are and where many of our city departments are covered through. Many of you might have picked up a 2-pager that we had out at front. That covers kind of a summary of the larger city budget and all the different types of revenues, where the money is coming from. And then you're going to see in the green all the different services that money is paying for. Similarly, at a smaller scale, just our corporate portion of the budget is about $3.8 billion. And we also have different revenues that are flowing in, as well as different expenditures, what we are paying for, which includes public safety, finance and admin, infrastructure service, and our community services, to name just a few. Our budget forecast that we just released last week does talk through and give a 3-year projection of kind of where our funds are going to be over the next 3 years. The forecast does focus primarily on our corporate fund because it accounts for most of our basic services provided by the city. And this is where historically, when you hear us talk about the gap, this is where that gap is. So the gap, I know many people have probably heard through the media from the mayor's speech last week where we said that our gap for 2020 is $838 million. What is that and how do we come up with that? Essentially what it is that we look at our expenditures, what we anticipate our costs are going to be for next year, and then we compare it against to our revenue, what our existing current revenues are, and what growth we think is going to happen for next year. Looking at that for 2020, our expenditures are increasing over 2019 by $853 million, and I'll get into kind of what that is about. Separately, our revenues have modest growth, and we're only seeing from our current revenue stream that we have, that growing by about $15 million. So that's where you're going to see the math behind what our expenditures are expected to be, where our revenues currently are, and where that gap is, which is how we get to the $838 million that many of you have probably heard that is out there right now. So what makes up that growth? So for next year, what we have looked at preliminary shows that we have an increase in settlements and judgments. We also have an increase in our debt services. Our personnel and benefits costs are also growing, as well as our pension costs. Pensions we're going to talk a little bit more about because I know there's a lot of questions around that. So why are we here tonight? And I know the mayor just talked about that in her speech today, but we're here to get feedback, to understand what's important to our residents, but to also talk through, potential gap closing solutions. This is what we're working on right now that we have released the gap. Just to name a few things that we are working through, we're looking at department savings, government efficiencies. We're also exploring new revenue sources. We also really want to find dedicated funding sources. So, things like pension are increasing in personnel costs. Those are ongoing every year, and so it is really important for us to find dedicated funding sources for those, as well as financial reforms. The other thing that I did want to kind of provide to everyone is that we have put out there mid-August, I believe, a survey to our residents to really get feedback, in addition to all the town halls that we're holding, about what is important and kind of to help residents understand, the budget process and kind of the decisions that go in there. So to date, we have almost 6,000 surveys that have been completed. So thank you to everyone here who have completed that to date. If you haven't, I highly encourage you to go on there. It'll show you the different revenue sources, some of where our expenditures are, and we'll go through kind of at the end the little math problem that we have at the end. The good news is that every zip code so far we have covered. We have responses from every zip code in the city, which is great for us. And the two main things that everyone, definitely in this area and as well as citywide, do want to hear about from us is pensions as well as property taxes. So I'm going to just spend like 2 minutes going through that. So the city has 4 separate pension funds that's listed up there. It's the municipal, the laborers, the policemen's, and the firemen's. Generally, a person's role within the city department determines which pension fund the employee is a member of. Generally, when you are enrolled in a pension fund, city employees are not contributing to Social Security benefits. And similar to your retirement plan that you may have through your workplace, the city and its employees do make contributions to their pension funds. These contributions and the benefits paid are set in state law and are further protected by the state constitution. So what you see here is since 2004 to 2014, the amounts required by the state to be paid by the city and its employees were not adjusted to account for some of the growth in expenses resulting in some of the decrease in funding made available to pay for those retirements. This was also made worse through some of the recession that we saw in the early and late 2000s. So what did the city do? So to address this crisis between 2011 and 2017, the city worked with the state to change some of the state laws by increasing the contributions made by new employees as well as decreasing some of the benefits owed to new employees. However, this also required that the city increase its annual contributions to meet the city's obligation. So what you're going to see next is the ramp. Because of some of the changes in the city's contribution to all 4 funds, we are increasing to an amount that more accurately reflects the expenses in moving the pension funds to a more secure future. These new requirements are projected to increase the city's contribution by about $940 million across all 4 funds. So the city, and you may have heard this through the news, is that we are moving to an actuarial funding, and we need to get the fund to fund our pensions to 90% by 2055 and 2057. So this is where the growth is coming, and this is where the $277 million that you see in our 2020 budget, that is where that funding comes from. Secondly, I know a lot of people want to ask about property taxes. There's been a lot of questions on our survey regarding property taxes, so we just wanted to clarify a few things just to set some basics. So the property values are assessed by the Cook County assessor, who is Assessor Kagi, every 3 years. The county assessor actually manages the assessment process as well as the administration of the property tax. And your property tax bill that you see outlines the different portions of the payment that is going to each taxing body. So many people, if you're a homeowner, you've probably seen this yellow bill. where does that property tax funding go to? I know there's a lot of questions around that. So there are a lot of different taxing bodies that get a piece of your property tax. So 54% of that goes to the Chicago public school system. We have 2% that goes to city colleges. We have 5% going to the Park District. 7% goes to Cook County. 1% goes to the Forest Preserve District, 6% goes to the Water Reclamation District, and then the remaining 25% is actually what the city's portion of your property tax bill is. So where does our 25% go? We did want to also share that with you. 30% of that goes to long-term debt, and 7% is going to pay for the Chicago Public Library System. So the remaining 63%, 64% I believe, is going all to fund our various pension funds. The other last piece I did want to share with everyone is that there was an exercise at the end of the survey that went into, kind of went through a math problem of $1,000. If you were given $1,000 and you had to kind of bear that out across all the different city services that are critical to the city, where would residents like to see that funding? So currently, and I know it may be hard to see from the back, I think about 50% of the funds is still going to, residents want that to go to public safety for police and our fire departments and our 911 EMS, followed by infrastructure services as well as community services, streets and sanitation, city development, libraries, our regulatory services, and then cultural affairs. So the breakout actually is in alignment with currently how the city budgets. So, it is good to see that the residents, what the survey has showed us is aligning with where the city budgets our funds. So lastly, before I leave, I do want to just put out there that all the data that I've gone over today rather quickly, I know, because I do want to get into the public comment portion, as well as the survey, the two-pager that you've seen, as well as the forecast, and any other information that's coming from tonight. If you filled out a comment card, we're going to do a FAQ and respond to those. They will all be found at chicago.gov/2020 budget. So with that, I will turn that over back to Consuelo.
Thank you.
So, all right. So this is the democracy part of the evening, and we're going to try to get this queued up with. So I have this little wheel thing. We're going to try to be as democratic and as transparent as possible. A couple of things. So you've heard from the city, and now we really want to hear from you. Okay, you got to close the flap. It's okay. Not bingo. Everybody's a winner here. We're all good. I want to just let you know that we are live streaming tonight's town hall, so folks are watching online. And those of you that are watching online, you too can submit your comments and suggestions. We want to hear from everyone. The survey is still up and open for responses. So if you went to Chicago Gov 2020 budget, you can, in fact, weigh in on providing some comments about the budget. So how this will work in terms of public testimony. So we're going to try, we have mics here and here. Again, if you, city staff, for those of you that need a card, if you can raise your hand, there's staff members who are here who would be willing to offer up a card. In the interim, I'm going to kick this off. So how this will work is we'll have 10 people. I will call your names, briefly sort of share what you've said you're going to be talking about. You have all of 1 minute and 30 seconds. 1 minute and 30 seconds. As happens with the Academy Awards, if you go over, your mic goes dead. And you will gently be encouraged to move on so that somebody else behind you can speak. We do that because the mayor really wants to hear, as well as the staff, what you have to say. And so, as you can see, we have we have about 90 minutes. So I'm going to try to make sure we get as many people as we possibly can. So don't feel pressed to fill up your entire 1 minute and 30 seconds. If you can do it in 30 seconds, cool. That means that there's probably 2 other people that can have another 30 seconds. If you need translators, so we have a Spanish speaking translator, and we have a Polish translator. If you are coming up and you need translation services, please let either Juan Carlos or JD know. These are both staff from this community engagement department, and they can help. The other thing, in terms of understanding the structure, this is at this point is really meant to hear from you. You're not likely to hear. So even if you have a question, we may not be able to answer it right now, but it will get answered. There may be a point at which the mayor or a staff member might want to ask something, and so I'll leave that to them in terms of their own prerogative. But don't expect that when you come up and you ask a question that it'll get answered just right now. It will get answered. It may not get answered right at this minute. So with that, I think let's get started. So I'm going to take, and what I would like you to do is you think about your comments. What we really are wanting to hear from you is your response to this question. So what programs or services are most important to you? That response and those responses, as we listen from, there's going to be, in addition to this town hall, there'll be 3 others. We'll have some weight in trying to figure out what priority is for community residents. So we really want to hear what you have to say about what you think is most important. So if you can read that into your comments, we'd be most appreciative. So I'm going to ask for the first 5, 8. And then I just want to, if you could just be patient if people are having to get through or down the aisles, because we just only have these 2 microphones. I'd ask that you be patient. So I think this is Merced Alday Maria Elena Cifuentes. So if you can start to make your way as I call your name to a mic, that would be great. So Maria Elena Cifuentes. Or Merced Alday, does that make sense? And they are interested in doubling up population. They're talking about immigration, homelessness, affordable housing. Terrence Gilhooly, and I apologize already if I mispronounce your name. I don't mean any harm. So you're interested in talking about return to city from income tax generated within Chicago, and who is the city auditor, and ComEd, and free electricity. That ought to be interesting. In exchange for free access to the city right of way. Darren Lewis, next person, is going to be talking about how the new administration will generate different additional forms of revenue. Rick Heidner, if you could get lined up, real estate and video gaming in Chicago. Estela Diaz, mental health resources. Teresa Stasik will be talking about saving money to help the budget. Tom Tresser, hi Tom, budget equity, and Kim Landon, I think it's Dr. Kim Landon, who will be talking about after school, clean energy, and paying off the pension. So are we all lined up? Okay, time, we ready? All right. So we'll hear from the first person.
Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Merced Alday y represento a Comunidades Unidas. He vivido en el vecindario de Albany Park por cerca de 15 años con mi familia. En nuestra comunidad hay mucha gente que vive en una situación de duplicación, como es mi caso. Esto quiere decir que yo, mi esposo y mis hijos y mi hermano vivimos en un apartamento porque el costo de la renta donde él vivía era demasiado alto y no pudo pagarlo. La verdad, si no hubiera podido ofrecerle esta ayuda, él estuviera viviendo en la calle como gente que vive en un refugio. Mi hermano tiene un techo, pero todavía no tiene un hogar. Esto ha causado mucho estrés en nuestra familia porque nuestro apartamento no tiene suficiente espacio para todos nosotros y no está destinado a hacerlo. Pensamos que esta era una situación temporal, pero se ha convertido en una situación normal para nuestra familia. Estoy segura de que eso mismo para muchos otros en esta ciudad.
Okay.
En Albany Park,
Your
el
time,
estrés de
I'm sorry.
duplicación.
Gracias. Your time is up. Are you, would somebody translate for us, or are you gonna?
So my name is Maria Elena Cifuentes. I'll be translating for Merced. She said her name is Merced Alde, and she lives in Albany Park for 15 years with her family. She had to take in her brother because he couldn't pay his rent. It was too high. So she was just saying that it's really hard for people who double up because people can't afford their own rent when the rents are going high. And she's just asking if the mayor could just please follow through on her campaign commitment and dedicate a substantial amount of funds to homelessness and affordable housing. Thank you.
My name is Terrence Gilhooly. I'm a retired City of Chicago pensioner. I worked as a transportation policy analyst, and I want to thank Mrs. Mayor for your words of kind support to fund the city pension funds. Simplicity is the emerging value in our society. So just as the city gets a return on the state-collected sales tax generated in Chicago, the city should get a return on the state-collected income tax generated in Chicago. It is a simple and fair way to generate additional revenue to the city. I want to give a brief history of the Chicago finances. In 1947, Mayor Ed Kelly, co-founder of the Kelly-Nash machine, political machine, put up a blue ribbon candidate for mayor, Martin Connelly. The City Council Finance Committee created a budget director and an auditor to control city finances. Kelly dropped dead just before he could retake the mayor's office in 1951. In 1955, Mayor Richard J. Daley beat Republican Robert Merriam, University of Chicago, Hyde Park reformer.
Okay, Terrence, you have 10 seconds.
Oh, well, anyway, I'll get back. I have submitted my comments, and I want to thank you, Mrs. Mayor, for this opportunity. I want you to know that my wife and I, and probably most others.
Sorry.
My wife.
She would.
You
like
can
to
be trusted
finish.
to do the right thing. You can be trusted to do the right thing, Mayor Lightfoot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor Lightfoot, rather loud, I guess. My name is Darren Lewis. So, Mayor Lightfoot, while informing all Illinoisans of the $1.4 billion debt facing Chicago over the next 3 years, you artfully painted a portrait of Black and Brown participating as partners in all facets of Chicago's revenue-generating solutions. During the last administration and the first 100 days of your tenure, I have attempted to introduce a new business platform that could generate hundreds of millions in revenue globally at no cost to Chicago or its citizens. Unfortunately, you would never hear of a proposal such as mine because those serving as Chicago's initial point of contact are not equipped to evaluate such proposals. Please help me understand how I can earn the opportunity to present my proposal to you.
Well, you just started by coming here tonight, but there's a table in the audience, in the vestibule for the mayor's office. If you provide your name and contact information, we'll reach out to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Over here, please.
My name is Rick Heidner. I'm a real estate developer and a business entrepreneur with businesses in Chicago and in the suburbs. I own a lot of real estate in Chicago, and I wanted to talk to you about the real estate conditions and also video gaming for the city of Chicago. When video gaming started, 125 communities were in, about 875 were out. Now there's about 900 that are participating and about 100 out. Being in the video game business too, I estimate easily that it's $50 to $70 million a year in revenue for the city just with the 5% and $1,000 sticker tax and a few other fees. Buildings would be filled, many jobs would be created. I've seen this in many suburbs. I personally have developed about $75 million worth of real estate in the last 5 years. Unfortunately, none of it's been in the city of Chicago. I know that the downtown area is still thriving, but there's a lot of communities in the surrounding areas that have a lot of empty stores. We could fill those. I've been really trying to get about a half hour of your time. Many people maybe have mentioned my name to you. I'd love to get some time so that I could let you understand all of this and the benefits. I believe that a casino would be wonderful, but there's also small business and a lot of people in the community that are in their small businesses that could really could improve and help and fill a lot of empty stores.
Thank you, sir. And
Thank you.
You're not the first person who's mentioned video gaming. It's definitely something that we've heard a lot about, so I appreciate your comments.
I would love to get some personal time and just show you everything. I'm the third largest operator in Illinois too, so I really could share a lot.
Thank you.
Thank
And I'll ask you to do the same if either now or later. Please step out to the table for the mayor's office and we'll reach out to you.
Tom,
Thank
I'm
you,
going to
sir.
ask you to hold for a second. Stella, if you'd like to, come to the mic, please?
Hello, my name is Estela Diaz. This is part of my story. I suffer from depression and panic attacks. I tried to suicide like 5 years ago. And it's not because I'm a coward. It's because I'm just tired. I was raped when I was 6 years old. And since then, I've been looking for help. It's very difficult for me to find out because I'm Mexican, I speak Spanish, and I can't really find help in my language and in my culture. And it's very important to me to stand here in front of you asking for resources. It's very difficult to sit and speak about your problems with people who don't understand you and don't have the time. The time is very limited, and I've been in a long waiting list for see a psychologist or somebody for help me. And I'm just asking for help. I'm not a number. I'm a human being, the same as everybody here.
Very much for being brave and for coming forward and sharing your experience, particularly in an audience like this. I can't imagine that that's easy. We can provide you with culturally competent services. If you see the lady down here on your right who's waving, if you go see her, she'll be able to assist you. Thank you very much. And
Thank you, Estella.
thank you for sharing your story.
So before thank you again, Estella, for being so brave. Before I call on Tom, I'm going to ask if Jean Brennan and Jan Robertson, Jan wants to talk about casinos, Jean wants to talk about other options for filling the budget hole. If you could make your way behind Tom, that would be great. Therese, if you want to, we'd like to hear from you.
Hi, I'm Therese Stasic. I live in the 38th Ward, yay Nick. And I'm a proud citizen of Chicago and a citizen of the world. When we talk about budget, I think about family budgets, and what I think about is how do we save? And I have 3 ideas for saving. One is, as we travel throughout the city, we see lots of lights on during the day. We call 311 and we report them, but there's still, and they respond, but there are still other lights on. So one of the ways to save money might be to turn the lights off. The second idea, which may not be popular, but pensions have been around for a long time, and everyone who worked and paid into them, yay. But for new hires, perhaps a different type of a program than a pension. Many companies don't have pensions anymore, and they're a wonderful boon. And my third idea, which I just came up when I was waiting, was Chicago is worth every penny. So we all have lots of pennies sitting at home that we don't know what to do with. So how about drop-off sites for pennies, like some churches have done, to see if we can make everyone see Chicago is worth every penny and fill some budget hole that way, unless there's some conflict of interest. And Your Honor, Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you. Love that. Love that innovation. Thank you, Therese.
Thank you very much for those great ideas.
Tom, thank you for being so patient.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Tresser. I'm the co-founder of the Civic Lab and the lead organizer for the TIF Illumination Project. Thank you. Tonight we announced the results of our 2018 TIF analysis using this sophisticated information tool. On January 1st, 2019, there was $1.51 billion in property taxes sitting in the TIF accounts. Mayor Lightfoot, you were elected on a promise to bring a new day of justice, integrity, transportation, and accountability to Chicago, and you have an unprecedented opportunity to make a fabulous start on these promises by ending Chicago's broken and unjust TIF program and emptying the TIF piggy bank, which is nothing more than an unregulated slush fund, and returning that $1.5 billion to the local units of government. This would give our public schools a one-time infusion of $900 million. In addition, we call on you to cancel the two racist and corrupt super TIFs rushed through the City Council in the waning days of the Emanuel administration. The Lincoln Yards Project and the 78 Project were gifted with $2.4 billion of public subsidies, which include $800 million in finance fees. And these two projects are in extremely prosperous and booming parts of the city. These TIFs are an act of economic warfare on our communities of color. So, Mayor, talk is cheap and the day is late. So please freeze and eliminate Chicago's out-of-date and out-of-control TIF program.
Thank you, Tom. All right. Thank you. So Caitlin O'Grady and Bonnie Lowenstein, if you could as well make your way to a podium. So we have...
Ladian, I am a scientist as well as a physician. First of all, congratulations, Mayor Lightfoot. You can do profound good if we all work together. As a physician, 3 times over the last year, I have told you the motto of Safe Haven is a penny of prevention is worth $1 of cure. If we reduce gang crime, murders, and joblessness even 10%, we would be saving over $500 million annually. The only 2 things we do this year are to have after-school programs for the kids and job programs for everybody on probation and parole. We can cut gang crime and murders 50% this year and significantly more in years to come. We save lives, we save money. That 50% would be $2.5 billion. As a scientist, I have a simple equation that can provide clean, renewable energy. I will share it with you and with J.B. Pritzker if you'll support the Safe Haven programs and meet, which you've said 3 times we would do, hasn't happened yet, and I would like a commitment to actually have the opportunity to meet with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll direct you to do the same thing. Go out to the mayor's office table in the vestibule. We have talked many times, and you've shared a lot of information with me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jean?
My name is Jean Brennan. God, it's going to be hard to do 100 with a minute and 30. The last gentleman before me here actually covered part of what I wanted to talk about, and that was finding out if the TIF designated for Sterling Bay project and Lincoln Yards could be pulled to fill the budget hole. Shh, please. Sterling Bay should have been able to take on this project on their own with their own costs. This is a project that is in prime area, unlike other areas of the city that are in need. Plus, why don't we tap TIF instead of taxpayers or property owners, yes, yet again to fill the budget hole? Let's see. Pensions, that's another pet peeve of mine. I'm not looking to necessarily take away what's earned or what is out there for certain people, but corporate America did away with pensions. Most of them did almost 2 decades ago. We need to be able to get Social Security back. This isn't only for city, it's state as well. This business of not putting it to Social Security is just nonsense. That needs to come back. Convert pensions to 401k plans, and we need to get a constitutional amendment now to be able to do this. In addition, in terms of programs and services, water and infrastructure. The water mains in the city, I know they're slowly but surely going about repairing those. The lead in the water is a big issue throughout the city. Rahm Emanuel taxed this to death on water with not only water and sewer and fees. When you go back prior to his time in office, what we're paying on that, the property tax increases are killing people. And I realize Chicago's only a small portion of that. It's county and, you know, CPS. But that is another thing. We've got.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yes.
I should have said this in response to Tom's comments about TIFs. We are looking at TIFs. It's a significant issue. We hope to be rolling out an announcement in the coming weeks. It is a significant challenge, and we are committed to making sure, at a bare minimum, that we are much more transparent about the way in which surpluses are calculated, the way in which we evaluate proposals that are subject to TIF. So we are working on it.
Thank you. So before we hear from Jan, Roxanne Smith, who would like to talk about affordable housing, homelessness, healing through trauma. Lynette Sims, if you would like to, if you both could come to this mic, wants to talk about the Chicago casino. This mic. Adele Sims for Senior Services, and Mark Koenig, who would like to talk about ethics reform and the average per worker costs in 2018 and recapturing TIF revenue. So if you could get in line. So if we could hear from Jan Robertson.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for this meeting. Thank you for wanting to hear from us, because we've been dying to say a lot of things for a long time that weren't heard. Thank you for the hiring freeze. Thank you for looking at the efficiency of our government here in the city of Chicago. I am sure if some of our efficiency gets cleaned up, a lot of our deficit will come into place. There's too many people doing jobs, making money, and not really doing a job. I see this all the time. It's my understanding that there are some city employees that can only work for 10 years and get a pension. I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, it's wrong. No one can work 10 years on a job and get a pension. So that needs to be answered somehow. The other thing is, in the 70s, when I was newly married and had no children, the city of Chicago started the very first lottery. The thing at the time was that it was going to be the caveat to help our schools be better than any schools anywhere else. I have seen one lottery turn into 10 or 20 lotteries. We have gambling things. We have all kinds of things going on, and I've never seen how this has ever bettered our city. Gambling is a huge problem, and people are addicted, and a lot of the people that are addicted can't afford to gamble. So please think twice before you let more casinos come closer into the city and infect our people that live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Caitlin?
Good evening. My name is Dr. Caitlin O'Grady. I am speaking as a member of the Collaborative for Community Wellness, a coalition of service providers, community-based organizations, and community residents focused on facilitating mental health service access for underserved communities. It is critical that the City of Chicago allocate increased funding for public mental health services. A systematic search of licensed private practice clinicians across each zip code in Chicago yields marked disparities in the availability of providers. There's an average of less than 0.1 licensed clinicians per 1,000 individuals in Chicago's high economic hardship communities. This disparity has been augmented by the closures of the CDPH public mental health clinics. Data from a public hearing convened on June 13, 2019, further highlight how systemic disinvestment leads to unmet mental health needs across marginalized communities of color in Chicago. Our data tell us that in the context of systemic harm and disinvestment, violent crime emerges as a symptom. In turn, when individuals experience violent crime and mental health services are not available to support them in coping with trauma, their mental health needs go unmet and cycles of trauma, pain, and violence continue. Across marginalized communities, individuals impacted by trauma are unable to access professional support due to a lack of free services in close geographic proximity. Please allocate increased funding for Chicago's public safety net and expand access to free, long-term trauma-focused services across underserved community areas in this year's budget in order to begin to address disparities in access. Thank you.
Thank you.
Newspapers, there's several options that you could utilize. You have an $11 billion budget. Why are you not addressing a stock or commodities tax? Let's say we have 1 cent tax on every transaction, every single transaction. You know, the Board of Trade is not going to move out to Rosemont or the suburbs. 1 cent per transaction would probably raise about $500 million. What about a professional service fee for every transaction? Every time Ed Burke takes and has a client in his office, why don't you take and tax what he charges that particular client? That would raise a whole lot of money. Okay. What about in out-of-city services? You've got all these suburbanites coming into Chicago, using our expressways, and using our highways, putting wear and tear on our infrastructure. Why is that not being done? And what about an income tax? How about an income tax? You're going to take and tax people more for their property taxes, but why not take the richer people, which is what all you liberals want, tax the rich? Why not have an income tax for all those? And lastly, what about a 10% cutback of every single budget? Why can't you cut every budget by 10%? That would save $1 billion right there. You got $11 billion. Why not think outside the box? Why not be a conservative for once and just cut the budget? If you don't have it, you can't spend it. Are you thinking about those?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love passion. It's a good thing. Is this
All right. Hi, my name is Roxanne Smith, and I live with my son, Roger Smith, who is in one of the buildings that was purchased by CMHDC from Fannie Mae through Communities United and Roots, which stands for Renters Organizing Ourselves to Stay. When I found out the home we rented had been foreclosed on, I was devastated. I didn't have anywhere to move to. If I was forced to move, when I looked back on my block, it was like $200 a month or more with the utilities on top of that. And even that, we didn't know how we would move. My son was born with Fragile X syndrome. And this is a trauma to him. It's a challenge, and they don't like change very well. Moving forward, we were able to stay in our home because of Roots. Same thing I told you before, Renters Organizing Ourselves to Stay. And I know that what we can do together, because I volunteer now as a leader with Communities United, I want to continue to make sure that other families are able to find homes and they are affordable and they'll be able to stay. Now, I also would like for people to please put money towards homelessness through Bring Chicago Home, affordable housing and mental health services, so that our communities do not have to continue to suffer and go through this trauma. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we get the next speakers, I want to ask if Richard Mathis, who would like to talk about funding housing, Lisa Stringer, who is interested in talking about cuts that need to happen, Sam Wickham, and maybe we can get you to this mic, who wants to talk about funding mental health care, Ray Sanders, who wants to talk about operating funds, and then Kathy Regals, who would like to talk about the constitutional amendment for pension reform. So, Lynette Sims, not Dale Sims. Okay, Marquetta, go ahead.
Bill Wiley, citizen. Mayor Lightfoot, the city's an extremely complex organism, and you're seeing tons of different viewpoints. You've only been on the job for a few months. I just wanted to tell you that many citizens are hoping that you are successful and that we are praying for you. And you have the support to galvanize all of these different viewpoints and put them in priority. I think what we want to see is progress. Not every individual viewpoint is going to be satisfied in the next week or two. We know that. Just wanted to give you that vote of support and strength as you go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Whaley.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
It's Mark Koenig. Thank you for being here tonight, and Mayor Lightfoot, I appreciate what you've already accomplished on ethics reform. Two thoughts on the budget for things to include, one in expenses, one in revenue. So I was looking at the 2018 annual budget analysis, and between 2008 and 2018, the average employee cost went up by 28% by my reading of the budget analysis. Over that time period, median Chicago household incomes are approximately flat. So if we have a true budget crisis, perhaps looking at whether the per employee compensation is at an appropriate level would be a way to avoid service cuts or tax increases, or at least mitigate the impact of that. On the revenue side, we've already talked about TIFs. Personally, I have a large line item on my property tax bill going to TIFs, and it's very frustrating to see that money go to a TIF rather than to help with the many areas that we have needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Should I move to this mic? You want to introduce yourself, please?
Thank you. Mayor Lightfoot, thank you so very much for this opportunity for all of us to express our voice to you. Albert Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Thank you so much for not doing the same thing over and over again. Hope not to take the entire amount of time. My name is Kathy Riegels. I've been a resident of the state of Illinois for the better part of 57 years. I have been a resident of Chicago for the better part of 25, 30 years. In that time, I love this city. My family loves this city. Much like when our family goes through a budgetary crisis, we have to look through line item by line item on where the expenditures are. Thank you for it looks like you're implementing that process. I ask, just in our family, we look at the largest expenditure and liability that the city of Chicago has is the pension system. Woman emphasized previously to me that in corporate world, which I was a member of for 30 years, we looked at pension reform, not taking away, but adjusting. And so I ask you to take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to have two from this mic, and then I'll move back. Can you introduce yourself?
Okay, my name is Adele, and I thank you for being my mayor. That's number one. And number two, I thank you for being a part of AARP, which you're looking into doing things for the seniors. I appreciate that, but in order to pay for these programs or services, which are important to me because I am a senior, could it be possible if consideration can be given to going after the corporations to pay their fair taxes? And instead of also looking to the middle class and the lower class to meet the budget. Could it be possible? Oh, I got 45 minutes.
Seconds.
Oh, sorry about that. but it can be possible, though, right, Mayor? It can be possible.
Listen, we have to make sure that everybody pays their fair share. And I know that there's been a significant imbalance going back decades on that account. So we are looking at ways in which we can obviously make sure that people are fairly treated. And one of my top priorities is making sure that low-income and working families get relief. It's absolutely essential. We need to bring those folks into the economy. That's why we've taken some of the early steps that we've taken, and we'll continue to do so. And we will look out for our seniors, I assure you that.
Thank you.
Thank you. You wanna come on up?
Hi, my name is Lynette Sims, and I'm the great-granddaughter of the Black metropolis. So my question and concern is about the Chicago casinos, especially because the 5 proposed sites are located in predominantly African-American communities. And the Journal of American Psychiatry, a recent article stated that African Americans and Latino Americans have a higher risk of gambling problems. We don't have enough mental health clinics in the community or clinicians to do with this upcoming problem. And also, this problem is getting exacerbated due to the Supreme Court legalizing sports betting. So my question is, do you have anything to address this? And are you willing to have a community benefits agreement to whichever proposed site is selected? Thank you.
Thank you.
So let me just clarify something. There is no site, and it's not 1 of 5, 1 of 10. There is no site yet. What we wanted to do with the feasibility study that we asked for, and the results are now back, is to demonstrate whether or not a Chicago casino, given the tax structure that the General Assembly passed, could actually be funded. And what the independent study came back and said, in short, is no. The 73% that goes out in taxes on the front end, the additional monies that have to be paid up front, make a casino as currently structured unfeasible in Chicago. So what we're going to do is go back to work with the governor, work with the General Assembly to make sure that we have a tax structure that actually works. And of course, believe me, I understand the concern that you've expressed about the dangers of gambling. If we get a casino up and running, we will make sure that part of those monies goes to providing assistance to people who have gaming and gambling addictions. But I wanted to clarify that point. Those sites that were listed were sites that have been listed historically, but that does not mean that any of those sites are going to be a site of a casino, particularly if we don't get the tax structure right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So again, I want to welcome those of you that are just now joining us. We are in the public testimony segment of this conversation. Diane Limas, if you could make your way to the mic, you want to talk about affordable housing. Charles, I think it's Patcher, who wants to talk about, I cannot read your, police accountability, liability insurance, I'm sorry. Larry Zolinsky, if you could make your way to talk about CTU teachers only pay for 2% contribution toward pension, and then David Dewar, if you can make your way to the mic to talk about where taxes are going to come from, we can get moving.
Sam Wickham, I'm part of One Northside and the Reimagine Chicago Coalition. My life was saved by a community mental health center. I was saddened and angered by ROM shutting down community mental health centers across the city. From what you just said, we don't have the money to open them back up. But there are several avenues of progressive revenue that the city could pursue, like the corporate head tax and the luxury services tax. On your campaign, you said you wouldn't raise regressive revenue because it hurts Black and brown people disproportionately. What has you backpedaling on the progressive issues that you campaigned on? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Stringer. I'm one of those middle-class people that people talked about where our income's been flat. And I realize I've lived in the city my whole life, and we're looking at leaving, which is heartbreaking. And it's because we have a disconnect. I have the unions and the city people talking about raises and things people are getting. We got a 2% raise. I don't know what my health insurance is going to cost us this year. And my property taxes go up. And it's really emotional and really frustrating when people say, hey, you can give more, we can tax the middle class, or we can tax the wealthy, that number is going to keep dropping because the people that we're going to tax the most can just leave. We have to come up with a plan to leave. And nobody wants to leave their homes. Whether people are for rent and things, we have a much bigger problem that we all have to work together on. And it's going to be the unions and the city employees plus us as residents that all have to work together, and everybody's going to have to give. We can't just tax the rich people. We can't just have head taxes. We need to all come together, and everybody's got to give something. It's like being in a family and doing your budget and figuring out what we all have to sacrifice to do this. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing, I think, that powerful testimony. And we do all have to work together. We can't just target one part of our economy, one part of our neighborhoods, one part of our geography. And I hear you loud and clear. There's an interesting study that's been done by a professor at UIC. I believe her name is Janet Smith. And she's looked at where the middle class was in 1970 compared to where it is now. And the middle class in Chicago has been absolutely decimated. So I hear you loud and clear. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ray Sanders. This is a technical budget question that's never addressed and needs to be brought out. Excuse me. CPS, the City of Chicago, and other Cook County taxing bodies started the practice in the daily administration in the 1990s of borrowing resources from current operating funds. Operating funds are supposed to pay for day-to-day services like teachers and garbage collectors, not long-term debt service bonds. This debt-adding practice is against generally accepted accounting principles. Today, the Cook County taxing districts are swimming in debt that eclipses the pension problem and makes the parking meter deal look like small potatoes. For instance, CPS spends $700 million a year from operating funds to pay the banks for debt every year. Just those additional operating fund monies alone could solve CPS pension problems and without a tax increase. What is the Lightfoot administration going to do to stop this practice of making banksters rich and begin looking out for normal taxpayers by enacting policies of paying our bills every year and not pushing financial problems into the future? Thank you.
Comment. In terms of the borrowing practices, there are two ways that governments generally borrow. One way is to finance long-term capital projects. It finances schools, it finances new construction. But in addition to that, there has also been the practice of borrowing for operating dollars, which is not a good practice. And that's something that we're looking to try to eliminate and take in this upcoming budget more structural approaches that creates long-term financial sustainability.
Thank you. Next, we'll continue at this mic. Okay. The gentleman in the green, if you can go ahead.
Hi, my name is Charles Pachter. I called the mayor's office and they said to send a letter for the mayor. They also said to come here tonight. I think the city should consider having police officers pay some kind of malpractice or liability insurance. Doctors pay it, attorneys pay it, contractors pay it, real estate professionals pay it. It could be taken out of their paycheck, or the police union could pay for it. It would take away shoulder some of the costs. The city is now paying. I understand they paid $118 million in 2018. It would force police officers to monitor their actions. It can be structured along lines similar to what doctors, malpractice for doctors, for lawyers, for real estate professionals. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, that suggestion comes up quite frequently. I'm not aware of an insurance company that actually offers such a product for law enforcement officers.
Can I ask Ronald Jackson, who wants to talk about mental health, and Carol Mayer to come to the mics as well, who wants to talk about rideshare and transit? Sir?
My name is Rick Mathis, and I'm also a part of One Northside and Reimagine Chicago.
About 4 years ago, I was homeless, and I've dealt with mental health issues for most of my adult life. And a lot of the city and state organizations that help me can't help me anymore because they're not being funded. I'd like to suggest that we reinstate the corporate use fee for using the city's infrastructure, and also ending big tax breaks like for the new Lincoln Yards, because if they can use our infrastructure and use our services, they certainly should pay taxes like we do. And one of the reasons I voted for you, Mayor, is because I was hoping you would try to stop taxes from affecting the lower and middle income people, and taxing the corporations to help pay for all the services and programs we need.
Thank you. Thank you. Sir?
Hi, I've been a homeowner here in this area for 36 years. My observation is that the police pay their full mandated 9% contribution towards their pension. Firefighters also pay their full state mandated contribution towards their pension. However, for decades now, Chicago teachers have only paid 2%, and the CPS has had to pick up, and that's what it's called, the pension pickup. They pick up 7% that the teachers should be paying. And now we have the union threatening to strike, and I'm just requesting that the mayor be firm and not cave in to union demands. And you know, it's about time that somebody stood up to them. That's it.
Thank you.
Sir, I can tell you that I think that we put a very generous offer on the table with CTU, both in terms of compensation, additional staff supports. There's no reason why we should have a strike. What I've urged is let's get back to the bargaining table, let's get a deal done, and I'm going to work hard to make sure that that happens. We just had school open up yesterday, and I travel all over the city, welcoming students, talking to their parents, talking to teachers. The joy that young children in particular feel going into the classroom, the security that they have in being in a warm, nurturing, and safe environment, we cannot afford to disrupt that. I hear you about that, and we're working on it.
Thank you. Diane?
My name is Diane Lemus from Communities United. Our city is in an affordable housing crisis. In 2016, more than 296,000 households in Chicago were rent burdened, paying more than 30% of their income on rent. Over 168,000 of these renters are paying more than 50% of their income on housing. How much money is in the 2020 budget to help low-income renter households and stop the displacement of our Black and brown families? For years, the majority of rental housing affordable for low to moderate income families across the city could be found in our 2 to 4 natural occurring affordable housing stock. However, the number of rental units in our 2 to 4 unit properties has declined while the demand for affordable rental housing for these families have increased. These buildings make up over 27% of Chicago's overall rental stock. What is in the 2020 budget plan to preserve our existing affordable rental housing like our iconic 2 to 4s? The city's most powerful tool to push back against displacement is through preservation of existing affordable housing stock. The mayor should honor her commitment to addressing homelessness, the Bring Chicago Home campaign with the use of the real estate transfer tax. Mayor, please, Mayor, find the money needed that would preserve affordable housing and address the cost of the 296,000 rent-burdened households.
Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you for your impassioned plea. You and I have spoken many times at different forums. You're always a great advocate for the need to make sure that we're providing affordable housing options, particularly for families. I've heard you loud and clear. We're working hard to do that. But I want to be clear, there is no budget yet. That's what this process is about. We are out here in communities. We've got 3 other sessions like this. We want to hear from you to inform what actually goes into the budget. So I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So if we could get Eleanor Anderson, who would like to talk about progressive revenue, and Mark Gales to the mics. And we're going to hear from Mr. Democracy.
Hi there, folks. My name is David Dewar. I'm from the 19th Ward. I don't dress like Uncle Sam to diminish the seriousness of this. It's just people relate me to taxation, unfortunately, not democracy. The reason why I'm here is to discuss about the pensions. Maria Pappas, the Cook County Treasurer, on February 24th, 2 days before the election, she went on a show, Mike Flannery, and she announced, she pulled up a tax bill and she said that we need to fund property taxes, 30 to 50% off of the dime of people in the private sector. Unfortunately, the public sector is cannibalizing the private sector through taxation, property taxes and otherwise. So what is the solution? There are a lot of good union employees that have worked and they deserve their fair share. There is a good book called The Illinois Pension Scam, and I often talk, because I ran for alderman, I ran for 19th Ward alderman, and a lot of people said, hey, if I work a few more years and I put in a few percentage more, I'll take 80 to 90% versus 40 or 50%. Myself, with the police, they're only 20% funded versus the teachers, but the police put in 9% and the teachers put in 2%. Something's backwards there, but $90 million is going through lawsuits. Myself, personally, I am pro-police, but I do have a lawsuit against the police, and I want to, as a pro se, for false arrest, and they're going to have to pay me. Frivolous lawsuits should be not looked at, but ones like mine that have true consequences should not happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Eleanor Anderson. I wanted to speak about this question that we're thinking about tonight, what programs or services are most important. I think that kind of suggests that maybe there are some that are not so important and makes us think about, well, which one are we going to cut? And I'd like to talk about the idea that we don't need to cut services if we think about more sources of revenue and progressive sources of revenue. I think when I look at the city of Chicago, I think a lot of us in this room feel worried. We know a lot of people are leaving Chicago. Someone spoke very eloquently about that. People feel that they're not able to stay because of issues of violence, because of issues of affordability of the housing, and because I think of issues of the people's perception of the quality of the schools. So what I would say is let's think about investing in our residents, investing in the city of Chicago so that people want to stay, are able to stay, we can have that tax base that we want, and that includes those higher income folks and those large corporations whose employees will want to be here, because we all know that this is and can be an amazing city if we invest in ourselves.
Thank you.
So thank you for your comments, but I want to push back a little bit on your presumption. We're asking people what you'd like to see because we actually value your opinions. It's not a presumption that by asking that and that we get a list, then we're cutting everything else. So I want to make sure we clarify that. That's not what this is about. It's about hearing from you. It's about hearing from you, getting a sense of priorities, so we make sure that what we're doing and what we're thinking is actually in line with what people need. We're actually coming to you to find out what you want to see in your budget and to be upfront and transparent about how dollars are being spent. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we hear from Carol, Katie Nolan, if you could make your way to the mic, who would like to talk about police reform, and Bridget Degnan, if you, okay, Katie Nolan and Bridget Degnan, if you could make your way to the mic. So Carol, if you want to.
Thank you very much. Hello, Mayor Lightfoot, and rock on. 4 women of color on the stage tonight. Woohoo! Yay! The city's in a good place. I wanted to talk about rideshare quickly. You mentioned in the budget the budget address that you were considering a congestion tax. I think a good way to think about that is to limit the number of rideshare drivers. There's 67,000 rideshare drivers in the city of Chicago and 4,000 taxi drivers. That seems a little out of whack to me. That really needs to be decreased. Increase the base fare on rideshare to get it more on par with taxi drivers, because so many of those poor taxi drivers have lost their the way to make a living. It's really sad. Out of state and non-city cars should pay at least the city wheel tax and the Illinois license tag expense, because I don't like seeing Hoosiers come here and use our roads and charge our people to drive around. You mentioned that the central business district is congested all the time. The neighborhoods are congested all the time. So really, it's more than just downtown that's congested, especially now that school is back in session. The mom school buses are driving people, their kids out of the neighborhood to schools. Try to have the political will to support bus rapid transit. I know it wasn't received very well when it was brought up before, but it takes political will, not just money from the CTA, which I know we're not talking about tonight, but political will to make BRT work. That will cut down on congestion.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Carol. Ronald?
In the light of humor, I am not George Blakemore. But good evening, Mayor. I'm sure you're familiar with your buddy here. It's been a while. But we stand here because we've been stuck at zero, talking about public mental health. Everyone here has said something about public mental health. Back in January, when the city council, the aldermen, most of them that's sitting there in front, stood up and passed an ordinance to talk about creating a task force for looking at trying to reevaluate what this city lost when they shuttered mental health services. But here it is, we're in October now. We're talking about a budget. You're saying, well, talk to us about the things that we need. If this city has not needed the mental health ordinance to go forward, and those people that were assigned to that to actually be out there, boots on the ground, making sure that all 77 communities were actively involved in the creation of something that was concrete to put funding for mental health services, public mental health services. You're saying transparency? Those are transparent. The things that are needed most are public mental health services. Transparent.
Thank you. Thank you. Mark Gales, and before you, so Katie Nolan and Bridget Degnan, if you can come forward, as well as Dan Dumel. And we have no sense of what you're going to talk about, but we're going to ask you to come forward, Dorothy Holden and Susan Paston. If you could get to the mics. And Mark, thank you.
Hi, Mayor. So I work with the Patio Theater, which is kind of right up the street here. It's a theater that's like this. And with what you guys are doing with the Uptown Theater, and at the Patio Theater, we just applied for the SPIF grant. So as far as budgets, that's very important. We're working with Alderman Spizzato, Alderman Jim Gardner, all Northwest Side, very excited about these theaters. So the SPIF grant is very important, and we want to thank you for that, and also for the Uptown Theater renovation as well. It's, these buildings, theaters like you're in right now, very important. The community loves them. You can do things like this. So just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you. Katie? Actually, can you hold and we'll go here. Sorry, Katie.
Hi, I have a question for Mayor Lightfoot. Would you support the sale and use of cannabis at part of the new Chicago casino if that would increase attendance by out-of-town visitors?
Sir, I want to be clear what you're asking. You're saying sale of cannabis in a casino?
Yeah, sale and use in part of the casino.
I actually don't think that that's possible. But again, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. If we don't get the tax structure right, there's not going to be a casino. So for me, one thing at a time, working with the governor, working with the state legislature to make sure that we get the taxing structure right so casino can actually be financed. That's something that's very important. And as I mentioned in my speech last week, why we place great emphasis on it is because it can provide us with a consistent stream of revenue to address our pension issues, not a one-time fix, but something that's consistent and structural. So that's something that we're looking forward to. Obviously, come January 1st, recreational cannabis will be legal in the state, and we are working to make sure that we stand up a robust regulatory structure so we can take advantage of that. But most importantly, and the thing that we're working really hard on, right now there is the medical marijuana market is completely dominated by white men. And there are no women, very few women, I should say, and almost no people of color. So if we want to deal people into this growing economy and this market, we've got to create opportunities, and that's what we're working on.
Yes.
So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie Nolan. Thank you, Mayor, for coming, and her cohorts. Thank you, alder people. More importantly, thank my fellow residents for taking the time. The reason I came up is when you're roughly looking at 20% of a budget deficit for settlements and judgments and debt, it's way out of whack. Rocket science? Not. But I know that 1 and 1 has to equal 2, and unless we spend some money with police retraining, those settlements are not going to go away. More importantly, we're tearing the fabric of our very communities apart. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we have you speak, if Joe, and I cannot read this last name, I think it's Clartamos, George Hesberger, Peter Montaner, Chidali Soto, and Karen Lenberg. If you are still here and would like to come to the mic, that would be great. Yes, ma'am.
Paston, I want to thank you for your emphasis on structural reform and for getting it right. You said something in your speech on Monday that I have hoped to hear but never heard in Illinois from any politician, and that goes back to the days of Mayor Daley too. And that is, we have to get this right, and if I have to sacrifice myself politically, so be it. That was gutsy. That was the right thing to do. I commend you for it. And you know what? I hope you don't have to sacrifice politically. I hope we reward you. But go get them. Work on making not only low-cost housing, but affordable housing that middle-class people can afford, and mental health clinics, and all the things we need to solve violence problems and make our city very livable for everybody in all neighborhoods. Thanks.
Thank you. Sir? Yes.
Hi, my name is Peter Montaner, and I've been involved with the Latino community all my life in my family since the 50s. And I just want to tell everybody here is you're all involved, but a lot is theater. And we got to be respectable to somebody that's working, that just started the job, because first of all, it's a hard job to sit there and then travel all around the city, do all of this running around, try to get the commissioners involved, try to get everybody involved, and then you have aldermen that don't help her along the way. So we have to make sure that we talk to our aldermen and make sure that they get involved, because your vote is very, very powerful. Forget about all this money and forget about all this stuff. Your vote is powerful. If we don't support our mayor and we don't get on our aldermen to help vote these things through, that's where our problem's at. All our problems right now, this is from bad work that these people have done prior. All of these problems that we have is because it was done prior, and these people voted for this stuff. This is a bad job. They get an F. And if you're with me, clap.
Thank you. The gentleman in the black, please. and tell us who you are.
My name is George Hesberger, retired lawyer and a CPA. I'm talking about revenue. Revenue is...
Mr. Hesberger, we can't hear you. Could you get a little closer to the mic?
I'm talking about revenue since you're talking about a budget. I think we should keep a lot of the existing schools because it closes and then you have to go in another gang area. A new school like the one in Englewood costs a lot of money, millions and millions. It's a lot cheaper to keep an existing building. Next, the state gives, you get a credit of 75% if you send your kids to Catholic school. Get rid of it. We can't afford that. And give that money, the savings, the Chicago Public Schools. Next, go through the alleys and ticket everybody that didn't close the, and we'll get rid of the rats and we'll make money on that deal. And then the Catholic schools, the Constitution is for church and state, but not the ding-dong school. Put the schools on the tax rolls and charge them taxes like we pay.
Thank you, Mr. Hesberger. So before I call the next couple of folks up, Bill Anderson, if you could come to the mic, make your way. You want to talk about waste, fraud, and abuse. Mary Etsy, Lee Dixon, and Becky Kleiber. So we'll start here. Is it Chitali, I think it is?
Good afternoon. My name is Siklali Soto. I am a lifelong Chicagoan. I am here representing SEI Local 73 members. The Chicago Public School Board, which you appointed, just signed a $33 million contract with the City Police Department, the police schools which are in our city, Chicago. This is just a way for the city to balance its budget, take money out of the Chicago School District's budget. But safe schools are more about building relationships, less about harming our schools and students with the police officers in our buildings. We need more people to be trained at a security staff level. We don't need more more police officers in our schools. I cannot think of a worse way to spend $33 million if our goal is to provide safe, clean schools that provide our students with the education they need and an environment to learn. Mayor, it is decisions like this $33 million contract, which is the Chicago Police Department, that makes many colleagues and myself mad. It's as though your Chicago School Board and the bargaining team have not even heard us during months of negotiation. That is just one of many reasons why my colleagues voted 97% voting strike.
Thank you.
Ma'am, we could get a deal done today if your union was ready. They told us no. They told us no. We're ready. We made an offer. We put it on the table. We'd love to get the deal done. Talk to your union leadership. We are ready. We are ready to get a deal done right now with 73. That's not what your leadership is telling us.
Up to the table with the right stuff.
Union. It's a different, they're not teachers' union, they're a different union, it's a different group of people. Okay, all right, let me get my time in.
Tell us who you are, please.
Madam Mayor, Aldermen, distinguished guests, thank you for coming and listening to us. My name is Karen, and I'm a 22-year city worker and a lifelong Chicagoan, born and raised in the Lincoln-Belmont area back in the 60s before gentrification. I know you need to balance the budget, but we're asking you not to do it on our backs. We live in the city as city workers. We pay the same taxes as all the rest of the citizens, and I pay 9% out of my salary to my pension every year, or every paycheck. So we're asking you not to take it out on our backs. We haven't had a contract for 2 years now. We've been in negotiations, and in your press conference, you said there's more to public safety than cops and firemen, and the rest of the public safety deserves a fair contract soon. We're 911 call takers, animal control, traffic control aides, crossing guards, parking enforcement, and we don't have a contract. We live and work in the city, and we pay the same taxes that everybody else does. So basically, we pay ourselves to work. We pay our salaries. So we're just asking, when you look at cuts in that, please don't take our jobs because we'll have to leave the city. And don't tell my grandson he's going to have a bad Christmas because Grandma lost her job. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen?
Mayor, I'm very hopeful, and it's the first time I've been hopeful in at least 8 years after the potty mouth ballerina. 3 things: you can't raise taxes. You just can't raise property taxes. People have, it's the middle class, that's all they have. And the person that can help the 10 people around them can't. And that's what's crumbling our families. Second is, you got to go after the pensions. You got to go after the fraud and the crap that created this. You know, I know that every cop deserves his pension. Every teacher, they deserve their pension. The guy who did the 4 weeks to bump it 80% and is on 3 of them and has enriched himself, that was never the point of a pension. And the third thing is, we can't have a bad school system. I mean, if we're going to spend the money, we got to get something back. And that's people are leaving, and they always have. And I'm a Chicagoan. I love this city, but I'm thinking of leaving. And you want to take good care of the taxi drivers? Make them traffic cops. Okay? There's 27,000 bad drivers out there. We can nick them all for about $600, take half of them out, get the taxi drivers back a little bit of money, and...
Thank you. So thank you for continuing to keep to the 1 minute and 30 seconds, ma'am. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is Mary Edzi. I'm a lifelong Chicagoan, except for one off year in Schaumburg. I'm really excited to have you as mayor and looking forward to your term in office. I know that I'm paying higher taxes than people in other places, and I don't mind paying those taxes if I feel like I'm getting good city services. I was disturbed to see when I wanted to have my curb fixed out in front to have one person digging while 6 people were standing there watching him. And I'm sure that the woman who was standing in front of me is a very good city worker, and there are many that are very good, and I'm sure these people have their jobs. But I was wondering what you're planning to do to make city workers more efficient.
Heavy sigh. Look, I think that most city workers, I was one, I am one now, work really hard every single day. And we are pushing, that is 100% true. These are people who you're never going to hear or see most of them, but they're working diligently every single day to deliver on the promise of being good public servants. For those who are not, and you heard me speak about this last week, we're cracking down on absenteeism, medical role abuse, and the like, and we're holding our commissioners accountable. We are asking tough questions, and some questions that may not have been asked before. We are in the budgeting process that started last June. We instituted something called zero-based budgeting, which means we're looking at what's the core mission of a particular department, and then challenging the commissioners and the deputies to justify to us any other ancillary services. So this isn't about city cuts. This is about making sure that we are delivering on services with a finite set of resources that we have, so we can demonstrate to you as a taxpayer that we've heard you loud and clear, that we've got to be better at managing your precious tax dollars. And that's what we're doing. I hear you loud and clear about the crews. I'm looking down to some of my infrastructure folks, duly noted. But we are working really, really hard to make sure that we can deliver and do it in a way that is efficient. And make sure that when we dig your roads up, we repair them quickly.
Okay, before we I just want to ask if Larry Nazamek, who would like to talk about spending on repairs, Mike Swiatek, who is wanting to talk about high taxes, Jennifer Venuto, and I think this is Joan Love. If you could make your way to the mic. We're about 25 minutes before we'll wrap up. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Becky Kleiber, and I've lived in Chicago my entire life. I've worked for the Chicago Park District for 33 years. I started my career as a seasonal recreation leader and have worked my way up over the years. Currently, those recreation leaders are paid $13.34 an hour. They're competing with places like McDonald's that pay $15 an hour, which just doesn't seem right. Chicago Parks help make Chicago a city of neighborhoods. On a daily basis, I see between 300 and 700 children, depending on the time of the year. Chicago Park District workers see generations of the same families coming through our parks. We love the work we do. One thing, too, that breaks my heart is that I won't be able to stay in the city of Chicago when I retire. And this is because Park District management does not respect and value the employees. Park District management is making it worse while they gave themselves anywhere from a 6% to 17% salary increase for 2019 alone. They're offering workers just 2% a year for the next 5 years. That doesn't even keep up with the cost of inflation. At the same time, they're proposing a 99.1% increase in what we pay for our health care. This is why Chicago Park workers are voting right now to authorize a strike. Mayor, our superintendent, Mike Kelly, works directly for you. I'm here tonight to ask you to fix the Chicago Park District management attitude at the bargaining table. We don't want to get rich, we only want what's fair.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Tell us who you are.
Bill Anderson. I'm glad I voted for you. We got a light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you. My points. Number one, you're only the third person in 3 years that has ever used the words waste, fraud, and abuse. And I thank you for that. And with the people that have come here that work for the city, they should have a way to contact your office when they see waste, fraud, and abuse. And another thing, I was just in Indiana. I made my bets, and I'll tell you, if you're gonna take Indiana's people's money, they're gonna take ours first. And one last thing, I used this when I was working. If I disagreed with someone, I would say I disagreed. I would say why I disagreed and what I would do to make it better. Thank you for listening, Pete. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let me just say about Indiana, the feasibility study showed that we're losing $260 million every year to Indiana and casinos. And if you go over the border to the Horseshoe, and maybe you're one of the cars in the line, most of those cars are Illinois plates. So we need to bring that money home.
Thank you. Before we ask, I'm just going to ask if Suzanne Ataus, I think it is. What is it? Atanis, if you would come up to the mic, please. And Andrew, oh my God, Mizowick, if you could join us at the mic before too. Yes, sir. In the blue shirt. If you could.
My name is Mike Switek, and I have a question to put to the audience, my colleagues and citizens. Is it high taxes that trouble you? Or is it the fact that the taxes are raised higher than your incomes? Your income has been flat for 30 years in real dollars. If our incomes are flat for 30 years, but our expenses go up, so is the city's income flat for 30 years, and their expenses have gone up. Let you decide for yourself why that situation exists. I'm not an apologist for the city. I don't work for the city. But I will say this, my heart was gladdened when I saw our new mayor push back on the president, push back on his daughter, and push back on Ted Cruz. I surrender the rest of my time.
Yes, sir. Tell us who you are.
Good evening. My name's Larry Nesmith.
When it comes to maintaining our roads, the city has a responsibility to repair potholes and cave-ins, things like that, immediately because it's a matter of public safety. But there are some other road projects which are not a matter of safety, not a real pressing matter of necessity, and some of them can be delayed, perhaps even indefinitely, depending on their priority. And a project that comes to mind is the one to reroute the traffic around the Centennial Monument, a few blocks from your house and mine. I live a few blocks away from you. And this is the one where Milwaukee Avenue will no longer be able to go straight down through on Milwaukee Avenue. It's going to be more green space. We're going to have traffic moving to the south of it in each direction, traffic going to the north of it, lane in each direction. They're going to reroute part of Kedzie Avenue. It's a big, expensive project. Now, I realize that a big chunk of this is going to be coming out of our tax dollars that are paid to the federal government and our tax dollars that are paid to the state. But there's some of it that's going to be paid out of the city treasury. And I don't know how much that is, but even if it's $1, it's $1 that we don't have right now. And so I ask that that project and some of the others that are non-essential be delayed.
Thank you, neighbor. Thank you. I actually just had that conversation with Alderman Rosa, who's down here in front today. So I'm looking into that project. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Tell us who you are.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Venuto. I am a millennial, which I don't see a ton of in this audience. I wanted to learn more, and so thank you for holding this. I guess my question is, how do I educate myself? How do we get more young people involved to these meetings? I wrote a bunch of questions. You gave me your card, I'll follow up. I want to educate myself. I want to become more involved. And so my question is just, where do we find the information, and is it presented in a clear and understandable manner? I don't know if there's a calendar of events on any of the websites. As a younger person, I don't watch the news. I probably should. I acknowledge that. I was lucky to hear that I had to read your article because I didn't know it was being publicized. So what ways can we make information public that aren't necessarily on the news? Can it be on the radio? So just things like that. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you. So we have tried to use every form of communication that we can think of to get the word out about the budget process, to invite comments. We did an online survey through SurveyMonkey. I don't know if you were here at the very beginning that when we talked about that. We've used various social media platforms to get the word out. There is a website, and I'll let Susie talk about that. We are actually specifically holding a budget town hall, our last one, that is aimed at the city's young people. So I'm hoping that you and others will be encouraged to come to that. But we have a website. We tried to make the materials as straightforward and simple and transparent as possible. You'll be the judge of that, but we'd love to get your feedback. Susie?
Yes, so thank you for your comments. We are trying to reach everybody of all ages. We do have a website. It's chicago.gov/2020 budget. Everything we talk about in this budget process, we will be putting on that website. We're also working through social media. I know we're streaming this on Facebook Live, so we are trying to get it out. And so if you have suggestions and we're missing something, please let us know, because we definitely, as the mayor said, want to make this transparent. We want to make things easier for all of our residents to understand. I know even the forecast, not everyone's going to read it, so that's why we did the 2-pager. We're going to do a similar one with the budget so that we can summarize that as well. So we are open to all feedback. If there's a better way to reach everyone, let us know. Oh yes, and we've also translated, so one of the other things we're trying to do is translate. So the 2-pager, if you saw in the front, we have it translated in 5 languages, and we will continue to do that and try to get as much information as we can out to everybody.
Thank you. So Marcos Ceniceros, I'm sorry, and Ellen, that's all I have. You two will have the last words. So we have, how about we start with you, ma'am, if you want to tell us who you are.
I am Susanna Tanis, and I am running for U.S. Congress 10th District. I live in Des Plaines. I also live in Niles. I have 2 homes. We also own a two-flat in the city of Chicago. I grew up in Albany Park. I have a lot to say. For one thing about marijuana. If you smoke marijuana, you're going to burn your brains out. Okay? Doctors will tell you, they see it on x-rays where your flesh-colored brain tissue has turned black. If you get off of smoking cigarettes, smoking pot, it heals. But it will burn your brains out and your other tissues in your body. If it's for medical reasons, you can talk to your doctor about it. We've been ripped off a long time with the S&P, Dow Jones, and NASDAQ. It has robbed City of Chicago, it has robbed Cook County, State of Illinois, all cities, towns, countries, states, and we want to get, for City of Chicago, Chicago Public Schools, returns according to the true profitability of billion and trillion dollar corporations and banks now. It'll be 100 years late, but we want it now. We don't want the S&P, Dow Jones, and NASDAQ ripping us off. 2 weeks ago, because of...
Sorry, ma'am. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Sir, please, over here.
Yes, I am ready. Thank
you. So, thank you. Thank you. Juan Carlos, if you could. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and the entire team for organizing this budget town hall, and of course for your entire service. I remember the time when there were 20 candidates in Chicago, and you were one of them over here, and you are the mayor, and I wish you all the best in resolving many issues. My name is Andrew Mikołajczyk. I coordinate social programs in affordable housing. So frequently we see many people who are coming asking for affordable housing. So there is a gigantic need for affordable housing. We had a waiting list open last year, and there were thousands of people who signed for the apartments. So there is a great need. What we see residents who have very limited income, who are trying to meet the ends, and we try to serve them in the best possible way. So our older adults appreciate the programs and services that you provide as the city of Chicago. The needs, of course, are great, but we appreciate, and I would like to express their appreciation and ask for your continuing support for the older adults in Chicago and also for disabled residents. And we would like to thank you also to the City Chicago Fire Department and Chicago Police Department. We hear many complaints, but from my perspective, during my 10 years of service, I have seen many police officers, firefighters running to help people who were in difficult situations. So thank you very much, and I'd like to ask for your continuing support for the adults. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Ellen, and then we'll have the last word here.
My name is Ellen. I have 3 separate points. One is there are a lot of common sense cost savers that could probably be put into place, just like in your own household. You might do things like use half of something or other. For example, I read in some periodical about how Social Security stopped sending out mailers with those information sheets that said what your Social Security benefits were going to be, and they saved several $1 million. What about things like not putting mailing paper property tax statements if people opt for that, not putting return envelopes in the property tax bills, common sense ideas like that. Maybe some neighborhoods like mine don't need so much street cleaning, that sort of thing. And maybe employees can be even given incentives to bring up their own ideas. Number 2, as far as the police paying for their own malpractice insurance, if there isn't an insurance company that has that product now, then maybe the city and or state should create their own police employee funded insurance pool and start it from there. And then the third thing is, a lot of people are, well, my time is up.
Thank you. Did you want? Yeah, the mayor's asked that you finish your.
Oh, the third one is there are a lot of people hurting. There are a lot of middle-class people who don't get 10% raises or 5% raises. There are people like myself who work on commission. We've seen our incomes go down. So to be adamant and strident and yelling for large increases when a lot of people are struggling just to stay at the same income level, it may not seem unreasonable, but to the people who aren't getting raises and are seeing their income go down or their expenses go way up, it really burns.
Thank you. Marcos, last but not least, let's hear from you.
All right. So good evening. My name is Marcos. I want to start by thinking about the what is inferred in this question, because something that somebody said before about like we actually don't need to cut some of these programs, right? And so I want us all to think about the crisis that this city is in, and how we have lost many black families from this city. They are leaving, and that is a crisis. We have a crisis of affordable housing. We have a crisis of police violence and surveillance. And this has a long history, and this has been perpetuated by past budgets, most especially by this last mayor that we had. And so I want us to also think about, on top of that, the recent actions by the past administration of promising the richest man and the richest corporation in the world, Amazon and Jeff Bezos, over $2.5 billion. And the money that we just gave away to Lincoln Yards and the 74, right? That's upwards of $2 billion. And that's thinking about future money, right? Not just now, but as you talked about future money in your address, this is one way to think about it. The corporate head tax is a real solution that is on the table that will bring in $106 million. That we are calling for the re-implementation of that. And freezing police spending, right? That's an increase of $400 million this budget that can go to these programs. And so the bottom line here is that we don't actually need to raise property taxes. We don't need to raise fines and fees, and actually we should stay away from that. There is a way to fund this budget now and in the future by going after the people who have benefited the most from these TIF programs, who have benefited the most from working people across the city, from tax subsidies, corporate subsidies, and all kinds of giveaways that the city and the state continues to give them. So that is the kind of change that we want to see in this budget. Not which programs to lose, but actually which revenue streams we haven't gone before that we need to go after now.
Thank you. Thank you. So can I just ask you all to give yourselves a wonderful round of applause? We said we would get you out by 8, and we promised we were going to do that. So I just want to, before we close, I just want to remind you again that this is a two-way conversation, that there are more than, in addition to this town hall, there will be a couple more town halls that I'll talk about in a minute. I want you, if you still have something that you are been burning to say and you didn't have a chance to say it, there are comment cards. I want to encourage you to complete those comment cards. There's somebody back in the back there that's holding them up. There's another city staff person. So please, if you would like to have a comment card, please do so. There's an opportunity around making comments on the Facebook Live. There is, again, a reminder, if you haven't had a chance to fill out the survey, I would encourage you to fill out the 2020 budget survey. And again, you can find it at the Chicago Gov 2020 survey link. Okay. Finally, let me see if I can get to there are 3 remaining town hall meetings. The next one is next Saturday. Next Saturday, it will be at Roberto Clemente High School. On September 19th, there is another at the Southeast United Methodist Youth and Community Center. And then finally, as alluded, there is a special one at Lindblom High School on September 25th. That is a youth budget town hall meeting. So please, if you are still interested in having and participating in these, we invite you to come out and join one of those. Again, thank you so much, and for your time and your energy, and just participating in this democratic forum. Thank you for your presence here. Thank you, Mayor. And so we're going to conclude now. But again, you don't have to go home, but you got to leave. Thank you, Copernicus, for hosting us. And there will be folks outside until 8:30. Oh, and the mayor is going to say a few more words.
So I just want to thank you all again for being here. This is extremely helpful to us. As Consuela indicated, there's lots of other ways. If you didn't get your question asked tonight, or if you've got now listening to your neighbors, you have some additional thoughts, we welcome them. This has to be a participatory process, and it's the start of a process. After we finish hearing from you either by survey, email, or here at the town halls, we will come back to you before we start the next phase of the budget process with city council hearings. So again, thank you all very much. We have to be in this together. We've heard you loud and clear on a range of issues, obviously, from property taxes, I think the answer is no, to making sure that we have affordable housing solutions to address a range of challenges. And also, one of the threads that ran through a lot of the different comments tonight is making sure that we've got mental health, community-based services so we can address the trauma in our city, and we've heard you loud and clear on that as well. But thank you all very much for participating. Thanks all the commissioners. Thank you the aldermen who were here, and thank you everybody who's participated here live or on Facebook. Appreciate you.